what if, and this is a big what if ancient wisdom actually held the key to fixing our modern social safety nets?
Hmm,
Like, what if it did?
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, today on the show, we are diving into the world of Social Security,
Oh, yeah.
but through a really unique lens,
Okay.
the book of Ecclesiastes.
That's right.
And we'll be pairing these ancient observations with a recent article about Israel's National Insurance Institute,
Yes.
which is basically their version of Social Security.
That's right.
And, it might seem like a really odd combination at first.
Yeah.
A king, from thousands of years ago,
Uh,
and a modern-day social program.
Right.
But stick with us, because I think you'll find that his insights are really helpful.
Yeah, they really do. They can shed some light on the challenges these systems face today.
Yeah, because Ecclesiastes was written by King Solomon,
King Solomon, yeah.
who was known for his wisdom.
Right.
And I think that's part of why his words carry so much weight.
Def-
It's because they're coming from someone who actually held power
Mm-hmm.
and saw firsthand how systems work
That's right.
or don't work.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's jump into Ecclesiastes.
Okay.
And it starts with some pretty stark observations
Yes.
about the plight of the oppressed
Yeah.
and the powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something I found really striking in this book, and it was this ranking
Okay.
he
Well,
gives.
yeah.
The living, the dead, and the unborn.
Interesting.
So he actually puts the unborn at the top,
At the top.
which is a little surprising.
Yeah, I would say so.
But when you dig deeper, it's not just about avoiding suffering.
Okay.
He's actually arguing that the unborn haven't yet been touched by the world's brokenness,
Right.
by the systems that create inequality.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful statement,
It is.
especially coming from a king.
Especially from a king.
It's like he's indicting the very structures that he's a part of.
Exactly. Yeah. And then those who have died come next. Oh.
They've seen and done what they could,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're free from the world's struggles.
Oh, okay.
And then lastly, in the least desirable position are the living
So the living are at the bottom.
at the bottom,
What?
ones dealing with these power dynamics,
Mhm.
these systems that seem to perpetuate inequality.
So he doesn't really sugarcoat it.
No.
It's a pretty bleak outlook on life, almost like he's saying that we're trapped
Right.
in these cycles of oppression.
He does have a somewhat pessimistic view
Yeah.
of humanity's capacity for change.
Okay.
But remember, this pessimism
Yeah.
comes from a place of experience.
Oh.
He's not just theorizing, he's speaking from within the system.
Yeah, that makes his perspective even more intriguing.
Yeah.
Because it's like he's an anthropologist,
Mm.
studying his own culture,
Mm.
noticing all the flaws and limitations,
Right.
even while participating in them.
Exactly.
And this leads to another key concept, I think,
Oh, okay.
in Ecclesiastes, which is envy as a driving force. Envy.
He argues that most of our striving, our labor, our desire for achievement, it all stems from this desire to have more
Okay.
than others.
To have more than others. Interesting.
Yeah, and I can see how that ties into his observations about the oppressed and the powerful.
Yeah.
Because you have this constant competition, this envy. It keeps people focused on individual gain, not collective well-being.
Precisely.
Yeah, and if everyone's caught in that cycle,
Yeah,
it makes it really difficult to envision real societal improvement.
it does.
It's like the system itself perpetuates the problem.
Yes.
But Ecclesiastes isn't all doom and gloom.
No.
He does offer a little bit of advice, a glimmer of hope
Okay.
amidst all this darkness. He talks about the importance of community
Oh, okay.
and the idea that two are better than one.
Right.
So he's really emphasizing the power of connection,
Yeah.
of people supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like he's saying, yes, the world is a tough place,
Right.
but you don't have to go it alone. There's strength in unity.
Yeah, it is.
And this whole idea of community and connection, it feels really relevant to Social Security.
It does, yeah.
Because isn't the idea behind these types of systems to create a safety net?
Mm-hmm.
A sense of collective responsibility.
It is, yeah. And this brings us to that modern day example
Okay.
I wanted to explore. The article about Israel's National Insurance Institute.
Okay.
So this institution was set up with that very goal in mind, providing Social Security, reducing social gaps.
Mm-hmm.
It's built on this idea of mutual responsibility.
Right, but the article reveals something, pretty unsettling.
Yeah.
It describes how the Israeli government used funds from the National Insurance Institute for purposes other than their intended use.
Other than what they were supposed to be used for. Wow.
Yeah, and so it raises the question,
Okay.
even with the best intentions, can these systems truly function as intended?
That's a good question.
Especially when we consider those power dynamics that Ecclesiastes highlighted.
Right. It's almost like on paper, everything looks great.
Yeah.
The mission statement,
Yeah.
the dedicated employees, the whole idea of a safety net. But the reality on the ground can be very different.
Very different.
And that's the tension
Yeah.
we see in this article.
Mm-hmm.
The stated ideals of Social Security versus the reality of how funds are sometimes managed.
Yeah, and it almost makes you wonder if Ecclesiastes was right.
Mm.
Are these power dynamics, this tension between the powerful and the oppressed, are they just unavoidable? Like, is it just human nature to repeat these patterns, even with systems designed to create more equality?
It's a question worth considering. And to get a clearer perspective, I think it's helpful to start by understanding exactly how this power imbalance manifests,
Okay.
both in ancient times and in the case of Israel's National Insurance Institute.
Hmm.
So let's start with Ecclesiastes.
Okay.
Remember, he was writing from a position of power.
Right, as a king.
As a king, yeah.
Yeah.
He observed how easily those in power could exploit those who weren't.
And he even uses that phrase, chastised with scorpions,
Yeah.
to describe how some rulers treated their people.
Right.
It's a chilling image.
It is.
And it really highlights the potential for abuse within these power structures.
Exactly. And this isn't just ancient history.
Okay.
Think about the Israeli National Insurance Institute.
Right.
The article highlights how the government, despite the institute's mission, diverted funds for other purposes.
Wait, are you saying that even with good intentions, Social Security systems are inherently flawed? Like, are they doomed to be manipulated by those in power?
I wouldn't say doomed,
Okay.
but it's crucial to acknowledge the potential for exploitation
Okay.
that exists within these systems.
Yeah.
The very nature of Social Security collecting funds from many to distribute to those in need creates an opportunity for misuse.
So how do we guard against that? Like, if we can't rely on good intentions alone,
Right.
what can we do to create systems that are truly equitable and just?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Ecclesiastes, while offering a bleak assessment of human nature, also provides a clue.
Okay.
Remember his emphasis on community.
Right. The two are better than one idea,
Yeah.
but how does that apply to something as complex as a national social security system?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
If individuals are solely focused on their own gain, as Ecclesiastes suggests, then those in power can easily exploit that.
Okay.
But if there's a strong sense of community, of collective responsibility,
Right.
it becomes much harder to manipulate the system for individual benefit.
So you're saying that a strong community can act as a check on those in power,
That's right.
making it more difficult for them to abuse the system.
Exactly.
But are there real-world examples of this actually working?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Think about grassroots organizations, mutual aid societies, community-based initiatives. These groups operate on principles of solidarity and shared responsibility, providing a safety net that isn't solely reliant on government structures.
It's really interesting. So while national social security systems are important,
Right.
they're not the only solution.
Right.
And in some ways, they might be more vulnerable to the power dynamics Ecclesiastes describes.
It's about finding a balance.
Okay.
We need robust systems at the national level,
Right.
but we also need to cultivate strong communities that can support each other and hold those in power accountable.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it brings us back to a question we touched on earlier.
Okay.
Is Ecclesiastes really saying that there's nothing new under the sun, that these power struggles are just an inevitable part of human nature?
He certainly seems to believe that human nature has a tendency to repeat these patterns, but I wouldn't say he's entirely without hope.
Okay.
Remember, he also stresses the importance of connection, of finding meaning and purpose in a relationship with others.
So maybe the key isn't to try and eradicate these power dynamics entirely,
Right.
but to find ways to mitigate them, to create systems that are more resilient to abuse.
Exactly. And that requires a shift in mindset. We need to move away from this hyper-individualistic approach and rediscover the value of community, of shared responsibility.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together,
Yeah.
that our well-being is interconnected.
It is.
That's a powerful message, and it seems incredibly relevant to the challenges we face today.
It does.
Not just with Social Security,
Right.
but with so many other issues.
It is, and it's a message that resonates across millennia. from the ancient wisdom of Ecclesiastes to the modern struggles we see playing out in the world around us.
This has been incredibly insightful.
Oh, thanks.
We've covered so much ground from ancient philosophy to modern-day policy, and we've even touched on the potential for community-based solutions.
Yeah, we have.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts.
Okay.
What's the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I think the key is to remember that these issues are complex.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers, no quick fixes.
Right.
But by engaging with these difficult questions, by studying the past and examining the present, we can start to envision a better future.
So it's not about finding a perfect solution,
Right.
but about continuously striving to improve, to create systems that are more just and equitable.
Exactly.
And that starts with each of us recognizing our role in these systems and taking responsibility for our actions.
Precisely. We all have a part to play in shaping a more just and equitable world.
It feels like we've uncovered so many layers to this whole
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
We started with ancient wisdom, explored a modern-day case study, and now we're talking about the power of community and individual responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
It is, and I think that's the beauty of exploring these timeless themes.
Right.
They challenge us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to consider different perspectives.
And speaking of different perspectives,
Yeah.
I keep coming back to Ecclesiastes himself. This wasn't just some philosopher writing from an ivory tower. He was a king
Right.
who saw firsthand the complexities of power and the human condition.
And yet he chose to share his insights even if they were often pessimistic.
Right.
He didn't shy away from the hard truths, the uncomfortable realities.
It's almost like he was saying, look, this is what I've observed. This is how the world works. Even from my position of power now, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, it's a powerful challenge, isn't it?
It is.
And it brings us back to the question of what we can do as individuals and as a society.
So it's not enough to just acknowledge the problem.
Right.
We can't just sit back and say, well, Ecclesiastes said it's all just human nature, so what's the point?
Exactly. We have a responsibility to engage, to seek solutions, to try and create a better world, even if it's just a little bit better.
But where do we even begin? If these power dynamics are so deeply ingrained,
Yeah.
is real change even possible?
I believe it is, but it requires a shift in our thinking. We need to move away from this individualistic mindset that prioritizes personal gain above all else.
Okay.
We need to rediscover the value of community, of shared responsibility, of caring for those who are most vulnerable.
And that's where Ecclesiastes' advice about connection becomes so crucial.
Right.
He might have been pessimistic about human nature, but he also offered a pathway forward. It's this idea that we're stronger together, that we can achieve more when we support each other.
Exactly. And that applies not just to personal relationships, but to how we structure our systems and institutions,
Right.
We need to create social safety nets that are truly equitable, that prioritize the well-being of all, not just the privileged few.
And that might mean challenging those in power,
Yeah,
demanding greater transparency and accountability.
definitely.
It might mean supporting community-based initiatives that fill the gaps where national systems fall short.
It's about finding ways to mitigate those power imbalances that Ecclesiastes so astutely observed.
Yeah.
It's about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their background or circumstances.
It's a lofty goal,
Is.
but it feels attainable when we consider the collective power we have, when we recognize that each of us, in our own way, can contribute to creating a more just and equitable world.
And who knows, maybe through our collective efforts, we can prove Ecclesiastes wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe we can create something truly new under the sun.
That's a really thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
And on that note of cautious optimism, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Sounds good.
It's been a fascinating exploration of ancient wisdom, modern challenges, and the enduring relevance of human connection.
It really has. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time.